Hello my friends, this video we're going to use color range again, but for a very different use case. Instead of masking, we're going to use it to adjust the colors. And it's something that I do a lot more. Instead of masking, it's more just adjusting things like if you have a look at the leaves, they are kind of a browny green and now, ooh, beautiful green. And let's look at the sea. It's gone from a blue to a kind of a nice tropical holiday cyan color. So basically we're going to use color range to make a selection of those colors and then use adjustment layers on them just to fix them up. It's a really common way that I use color range. Let's jump in now and learn how to do it. All right, so I'm going to work on the document we used in the last video. If you don't have that or you skipped it, just go to File, Open, and open up your exercise files, and we're using color range 3. But basically, we combined color range 3 with 1 and 2. We've got this kind of like composition now. So what I'm going to do is just turn the eyeball off on both of these guys, okay, which is the banana and the blueberry. And I want the background selected. So I want to change the blues and the greens. Basically every landscape photograph I ever take, I want to kind of enhance the greens a little bit, and often the sky needs just a little bit of Photoshop love. And color range is an amazing, quick and easy way to isolate those things to make those adjustments. Very different from the last video where we're using it to completely mask it. So background layer selected, select, let's go to color range. And depending on what you were last doing, you might have to switch back to none. You might have to turn off localize color, and you get yours looking something like mine. We'll start at 100 fuzziness-ish. I'm gonna work on the sea here, and it's got a very similar color to the sky, so I'm happy to work on both of those. I'm gonna click once in here. You can see it's clicked quite a big chunk of it. Let's switch it to the selection preview to grayscale so we can kind of see it. Now it's grabbed most of the sea except for this chunk here. Grab the plus button and let's add this bit, and it's got most of it. The only trouble is it's got quite a lot of the sky, so I'm gonna lower the fuzziness. Okay, so when I was using my masks, I don't use the fuzziness very often, but when I'm doing this kind of like subtle hue saturation changes, now I'm getting mine down-ish. Now there's no right or wrong, okay, there's no magical number. What you'll find is whenever I'm doing this, I'll do it once and see if I've gone too far or too little, and then come back and change it. So that's worked for me. Let's click on OK. Basically, I've got a selection of all the kind of bluish bits, and I want to make them more cyan. Instead of making a mask on their own layer, the easy way now is to click on Adjustments, and let's click on Hue and Saturation. And what it does is it takes that selection you had and applies it to this Hue and Saturation adjustment layer. So I can turn it on and off and make adjustments to it without destroying the background. We love a bit of non-destructiveness. And all I'm going to do is, I love, blue, skies are blue, but actually they look really nice when they're cyan. They look tropical holiday. So I do that often with all my landscape is I'll go through and just add a bit more of the cyan rather than the blue. How much? Yeah, it's working for me. I might bump up the saturation just a tiny bit. Go way too far. But somewhere in here. Turn the eyeball on, off. So it's just a really easy way to isolate colors. Especially generic ones like sky, where maybe making a selection can be quite tough. We're gonna do the same thing for these leaves. Whenever I photograph kind of foliage, it always, like I know it should be green, but it always is this kind of like motley brown, yellow color. And that's just the way of the world. But what I want to do for this promotional image, I want it to be a lovely green, a nice rich but believable green. It's the same thing. I'm gonna click on my background layer. I'm gonna grab my select color range. What I might need to do is switch it back to none, and then click on one of these. And it's picked, there's so many different kind of green browns going in here. I'm gonna click, hold and drag across a few of these where I know it's kind of it's a good representation of the whole document. I'm gonna click back into here into grayscale. And for that to work, you actually need to have this eyedropper on the plus. Okay, just clicking and dragging across it with this first tool doesn't work. So I'm gonna go back to none. I'm gonna say you, my friend, I'm gonna click and drag across there. And now I'm going to go back to grayscale, and you can see I've got a pretty good selection of this. It's got probably a lot too much of the sand as well. The browns out of the leaves are the same browns that are in the sand. So I'm going to lower the fuzziness a bit. Okay, I'm going to grab my minus eyedropper tool, click once in here, click once again, just to get rid of these sands in here. And we're getting pretty close. All right, let's click OK. Okay, so I've got my selection, same as before. Let's go to adjustments, let's go to hue and saturation. And what I'm gonna do is gonna yank up the saturation really high, way past where I need it, just so that I can know that I've got the right colors. Okay, so I wanna pick a green that's not too that green, okay, not too bluey green. I want something in the middle, nice and rich, and then I can lower this down to kind of make it believable-ish. turn the eyeball on and off on that layer, and you can see what I'm doing here, just moving the kind of brown greens into a bit more lush green. The only trouble with this, I find that this island here is probably oversaturated now. Often color range gets used in a combination. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select on the mask, grab my B key for my brush tool. I need black as my foreground color. Remember, X toggles it back and forth. Brush size, we're going to use our shortcut, and I'm just going to get rid of this. I'm going to make my fuzziness a bit higher because it's quite out of focus. Brush size down. Okay, just to touch this up. I might have lowered the opacity of this brush so it's not such a drastic change, because now I feel like the island is completely brown. Really hard to get in here. I could get in with a really small paintbrush to fix this up, but probably what I'd do is probably just lower the opacity of my brush before I painted it all out and kind of faded it into here. So let's do that before I go. I'm going to go undo a billion times till my island's back. Not too far. There we go. So with this layer selected, with the mask selected, brush tool, I'm going to show you a new little shortcut. We've learned the size left and right, up and down for the hardness. Another cool one is see the opacity. So if you look at your keyboard, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along the top, not the ones on the number keypad, you might not have one of those, but the ones that are above the letters on your keyboard. Watch up here where it says opacity. If I type the 2 key, it goes to 20%. 5 is 50%. 9 is 90%. 0 is back to 100. Weird. If you want to do it super fast, like 5, 5 together, you can see it changes the opacity here. So it's just an easy way of picking an opacity without having to go, jump up here and slide it up and down. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just not getting rid of it at all. Mainly so I can save the trouble of having to go through and paint out between this kind of crossover of the leaves and the island. I'm going to turn my banana on and my amazing blueberries. And that is an easy way to select a particular hue, often really good for landscapes, so skies and kind of grasses, trees and stuff. Make a selection, and with that selection, you just click on your adjustments panel, and that adjustment takes that selection and turns it into a mask for its own layer. So then you can turn it on and off later on, non-destructively. It's all on its own layer and is awesome. All right, that is it for this video. I will see you in the next one.